Canada supports Israel's right to defend itself.
We will continue to stand up for the right of Israel to defend itself.
Our position has always been that Israel has a right to defend itself.
Disavow the support of all Hamas sympathizers, anti-Semites, Israel haters on college campuses and everywhere else.
Because I support Israel's right to defend itself.
Frankly, I don't believe in proportionate response to terrorism. I believe that the way that you stop terrorism is with wildly disproportionate response. That doesn't mean in terms of targeting civilians. It means in terms of killing as many terrorists as humanly possible and allowing them to dictate the terms of engagement by hiding behind civilians in areas that they are supposedly responsible for means that the only option for Israel is to surrender to Hamas's hatred of its own citizens, its willingness to use its own children as human shields. No country worth its salt could ever do that.
Many of you who are hearing that Palestine is going through a genocide right now are also hearing that on the other side is saying that it's just going through war. They just died because of collateral damage, which sucks because I hear that a lot. But what's happening in Palestine is something really horrible. But before I discuss what's happening, I must discuss what led up to those events. As the events of October 7th were a horrible historic event, I will not deny that. But you have to understand what led up to that moment, because things did not start with October 7th, and I want to discuss this. Now, it all starts with the history. Why did Israel become a country? There are three major reasons why it all started, and it all happened in the 1800s. During the 1800s, there was a lot of hate directed at the Jewish people. In Europe, the Catholic Church were not a fan of the Jews because of, what happened with Jesus and all that. And this made it hard for Jewish people to live. Things like pogroms, which killed a lot of Jews, and they had issues with jobs, universities, getting in government positions, and getting land from certain areas. This is where Zionism was born. Now, what is Zionism? According to the Anti-Defamation League, Zionism is the movement for the self-determination and statehood for the Jewish people in their ancestral homeland, the land of Israel. And this is like what it started out as. I guess you could say that it wasn't necessarily a bad thing, because when Zionism first existed, it was just to battle like anti-Semitism. So it started off as something, kind of a good. Who could blame them, They're a very suppressed group, so I would honestly argue that it was kind of a good thing when it first started. But let's see what happens 100 years later. For this next part, I want you guys to take it with a bit of grain of salt, because I'm actually not a religious person at all, and I didn't dive too deep into the religious context of this. Basically, in Hebrew Bible, they discuss things like how Israel is supposed to become a country, like the Messiah is supposed to come, and then they form Israel into a country. It's something like that. Like, there's like one text, I'm going to link it, and I think this is the text they're referring to. I saw Basim Youssef talk about it, but like he claims he talked to scholars and that's what they said. But take this with a grain of salt. This is a maybe. Like I said, I'm not a scholar on this type of thing. So I am going to say, like, I'm not going to say this confidently, that this may have been a pretty good reason to why it was a thing. It sucks that he didn't like the sources for this, though. I kind of wish he did. But he claimed that like the Messiah came, and then like the Messiah is supposed to come like after they make like Israel into a country, is what the Israeli government or the Zionist people said at the time. They said that like, let's make Israel into a country, and then the Messiah is supposed to come. So they actually did it the other way around. It's supposed to be that the Messiah is supposed to come, and Messiah is like the Jesus of like Jewish scriptures. So like the Messiah is supposed to come, and then they formed like Israel into a country. But they did it the other way around. They made Israel into a country, and then that's supposed to make the Messiah come, which was one of the reasons they said. Like I said, take this with a grain of salt, because this is what Basim Youssef had to say, and I wasn't able to like fact check it. Maybe in the future, hopefully, like, I doubt he'll watch this video, but if he does, hopefully he can source it. But I wasn't able to find anything, because I don't want to use Wikipedia or something unreliable as a source. Next, one of the last reasons why Israel became a country was just World War II. Hitler came over. That dude was just like, I have a permanent solution to taking care of the Jewish problem, which is just them being racist. Basically, just a bunch of Nazis being racist, and they basically just wanted to like kill a bunch of them, and they led to a bunch of refugees going to Palestine, and like a lot of refugees went everywhere, like Canada and like America. Some people in Canada, like they couldn't take any more refugees, so they had to like let them go, and then a lot of them kind of got into concentration camps afterwards, which is a bad thing about Canada. They had a lot of Jewish people, but still, they still should have taken them. But then this kind of led to a bunch of like Jewish people going into Palestine, and this is what like kind of escalated things because the Jewish population skyrocketed in Palestine. All right, so now that you guys know the perspective of the Jewish people at this time, this is completely different group of people. These are like the grandparents of like the Jewish people that are living in Israel right now. So they basically like they were going through a lot, you know, they're a very suppressed group. They were going through a lot of anti-Semitism at the time. You know, it's the 1940s, everyone's pretty anti-Semitic. It sucks, but that's how Europe was. And you know, one of the key things about Zionism is they wanted to do it outside of Europe. So it's happening in Palestine, you know, like I mentioned. And a lot of like Jewish people at the time, they were doing deals with people outside of the country to like buy land. So a lot of like Palestinian people got evicted, and the idea was basically just to like buy like the land off the Palestinian people, just like buy it off. And like, you know, as more and more like Jewish people came in and they were buying more land off, things started to get a little bit bad. Like Joseph Witz, sorry, my pronunciation might suck because I'm not from Middle East or European, but yeah, so Joseph Witz, director, Land Department of Jewish National Fund, 1940, his quotation was, "The only way is to transfer the Arabs here to neighboring countries, all of them, except perhaps Bethlehem, Nazareth, and Old Jerusalem. Not a single village or tribe must be left." And basically, like I said, the plan was to buy them out, make the move, and then like the whole state of Israel would be born, where it's like a Jewish state, you know, just to buy them out. And they were kind of moving them to, they were going to be put in Transjordan. That's Jordan, but they call it Transjordan at the time. And a lot of Arab people were really against getting put there. So that's when they decided to make the Arab Revolt. The Arab Revolt just kind of started fighting back against Zionism. So the British colony kind of got pissed off over the Arab Revolt. And they kind of just decided to like stop doing like deals with them, because like the thing was like the Arabs were rejecting their deals because of they were really unfair. Like they wanted to do a two-state solution, right? But the thing was that the population of the Jewish people was 1/3 of what it was to, like, you know, when the Arab people were 2/3 of the population, which seemed really unfair that the Jewish people would have 56% of the land, and this included the farming land. Like they have more farming land, but they were only 1/3 of the population. So a lot of like Arab people found this really unfair, which is why they didn't accept it. In hindsight, it probably would have been better to get it, just because of, you know, all the things that are happening now. It would have prevented it. But during the time, it's incredibly like unfair, and it was definitely not worth it. Even though it's unfair, it might have been worth it now, but at the time it was seen as extremely unfair. Now things started to escalate after this. Now that the Arab Revolt were a thing, the British colony, they were kind of the ones controlling Palestine at the time, and they decided to let the United Nations take care of things, since everything kind of started like escalating. And the United Nations was controlled by the like America, since America kind of ruled the world at the time after World War II. The United Nations decided to do the really, really terrible thing of launching the 1948 Great Catastrophe, which caused a lot of massacres, and a lot of people died, and a lot of Palestinian people got displaced overnight.
رحت أنا ماشي بعرق الحيط مش من الشارع الرئيسي، من البساتين. الفرن له شباك على ولا اليهود في الفرن، والنسوان قعدات على الارض، وكل واحده قاعده وحاطه ايديها على راسها هيك، وبقولوا للفران ارمي ابنك بالفرن، ارمي ابنك بالفرن، اسمه حامد. قال لهم انا ما برمي ابني. قال له شوي. هم ضربوا الحاج حامد على راسه ومسكوا الولد رموه بالفرن. أنا شفت هالمنظر ما تمش فيها حيل من مرة يعني. بعدين مسكوا الأب حطوه وراه قالوا له الحق ابنك. أنا جيت عديت قلت هلا بيمسكوني قمت أركض.
So this wasn't just this wasn't just told by Palestinian refugees or anything. This is told by Israeli soldiers, like I said, Israeli veterans that went here. They were for Zionism because at the time, keep in mind that for them, this was basically like oh, if we don't stop this, then there might be like a second Holocaust. Because I guess they were kind of like so traumatized from all the anti-Semitism that they had that they just kind of like put it on the Palestinian people. Which sucked for them, but like, you know, it's obviously horrible what happened with anti-Semitism, but obviously like with the 1948 Great Catastrophe, that doesn't excuse it.
After the massacre, they took the people which remained, they took them in a car and went through Jerusalem.
Irgun trucks full of survivors paraded up and down streets in Jewish neighborhoods. Spectators mocked, spit at, and even stoned the villagers.
It was very ugly. After these things, I did not know if I am a Zionist.
And there was like massacres in the Deir Yassin, sorry for pronunciation, Hafia, Jaffa, and quite a few other places. But this is when, like, you know, things started, like, people started getting like displaced overnight. There was a lot of murders, a lot of like people getting violated, and like a lot of Palestinian people like died and were violated, which was like a really rough time for them.
Ordinary Israelis see what their military is doing and celebrate it. It's not just fringe elements who see this and think it's a good thing.
that was a lot to take in. Don't worry, guys. That was just a summary of a summary. I know it's a lot I just crammed into you guys, but I think it was important. And this is just, for you guys to all get started. And there's a lot of things that happened before and after the 1940s, which I do recommend you guys look at, because there's some people that try to talk about how, like, before the 1940s, a bunch of like empires from like 100 years ago, something happened, and then, like, they try to justify that, but like nothing really justifies massacring a bunch of innocent, like, kids and families. Nothing justifies that. It's stupid. I don't know why people bring that up, but yeah. But you guys can look that up in your time. But let's discuss October 7th, because I want to get this done, and I don't have the time to talk about that. I want to discuss this right now. Now remember, Palestine is under occupation. Even after they quote-unquote withdrew in 2005, they still have control. Like, they dominate the Gaza Strip with its currency, population, register, custom controls, and regime of restrictions, postal communications, internet, fuel services, and they were all strictly, like, controlled by Israel. It doled out permits for all services into and out of Gaza, including fuel, medical supplies, entry and export of food materials, and all other goods and services through a system of extortionist Israeli middlemen. Like, you gotta keep in mind that, like, Israel was very strict. It got to a point where they had fishing restrictions. They couldn't even get food like that. It was very, very bad. So, like, back when Hamas got elected, the West kind of painted them as, like, this terrorist, because they were kind of against the occupation, because for obvious reasons, they're kind of controlling everything. A lot of people had it really rough back then, because they had, like, really poor living conditions, which is why Hamas was incredibly violent. Remember, I'm not justifying Hamas, I'm just discussing why things were the way they are. And what happened was there was people who were, like, having, like, this peaceful march. It was called the March of Return. That march was supposed to talk about, like, the land of, like, 1948, where, like, the Palestinian people, like, they all lost their land. Remember when everybody got displaced? And many were killed near the border. There was, like, a bunch of, like, Israeli snipers, like, killing them. Israeli people were treating them really poorly. Even after these peaceful protests, they were killing them.
حضرتك من الشهداء؟
كنا احنا وياها ميداني.
يوم استشهدت
برضه كنا ميداني احنا.
كنت في نفس اللحظة؟
رزان رفعت ايديها ان اخذته، هذا حامي الها انه ما يضخوها ولا يعملوا معها شيء، انها تاخذ الاصابة اللي قدام.
نعم.
فهي وراجعة خبطوها رصاصة.
وين اجت الرصاصة؟
في صدرها، وطلعت من ظهرها وشظايا على رقبتها.
ان شاء الله. احلى شهادة، فيش احلى من هيك.
كانت بالنسبة لي صديقة واختي. كل حياتي كانت بالنسبة لي. يوصوها بدم بارد مباشرة. كانوا معنيين برزان، معنيين. كان سلاح رزان الوحيد في المعركة، هذا هو سلاح رزان بنتي. كل العالم يشوف سلاح رزان، هذا السلاح وهي الذخيرة تبعت السلاح تبعها، وهذا عشان هيك قوصوها والعالم كله بشوف. لإمتى يسكت العالم كله؟ مين بده يحاسبهم على جرائمهم؟ مين بده يجيب لي حق رزان؟ أنا بطلب العالم كله يجيب لي حق رزان. اللي بيدعوا السلام، وين السلام؟ سرقوا البراطة.
Then there was the fact that Benjamin Netanyahu also didn't want Hamas and Fatah to get along, and they didn't, like, want them to negotiate. And if they did, then, Benjamin Netanyahu, he limited their electricity for, like, a few hours, which kind of worsened the condition for a lot of Palestinian people. That's why a lot of people didn't like them. And this is exactly why Hamas became a really violent group. This is kind of what's happening. Israel is causing really poor living conditions because of the occupation, and a bunch of Palestinians are tired of the occupation because they live really poor living conditions. Like, even the United Nations, they literally said that, like, by 2020, Gaza is going to be completely unlivable. That's how bad things were. The UN literally said this. This is kind of the context for October 7th, and I think this is very important to understand. During October 7th, a really tragic event happened. Before October 7th, Israel decided to kill a few Palestinians in the West Bank. And during that time, there was a festival happening in Israel, and Hamas came over and they killed and kidnapped a lot of people. They killed around 1,200 people. It was almost more, but it's hard to say for right now, just because it's still like hard to like get all the details. But there might have been more, and this include like men, women, and children from the looks of it. Israel said that there were beheaded babies inside of October 7th. The thing was, this was disproven. This was debunked. And I think this is what made a lot of people skeptical of what actually happened there. Like, there's no denying that 1,200 people died. Nobody's arguing that. Everyone literally is saying this is horrible. People are very skeptical about what Israel has to say. Even though what happened on October 7th was absolutely horrible, the fact that they lied about 40 beheaded babies has people very skeptical about what Israel has to say. And people say this because they're afraid that Israel is doing this to dehumanize the Palestinian people by making it look like 40 beheaded babies is what Hamas is willing to do. This kind of makes it so the actions of Israel look more justified even if there's casualties, because they use a justification that they're going after Hamas. But the thing is this hurts a lot of the Palestinian people. For example, with famine, when they cut off all the supplies going into Palestine, this makes it very easy to make them not feel as bad for them.
אנחנו מטילים מצור מוחלט על העיר עזה. אין חשמל, אין מזון, אין מים, אין דלק. הכל סגור. אנחנו נלחמים בחיות אדם ואנחנו נוהגים בהתאם.
I want to talk about sexual violence against women. This is a very hard topic to talk about, but I do think it is very important. So there's actually quite a few journalists that I actually have a lot of respect for who say that they're questioning whether or not there was sexual violence on October 7th. And the thing is I think it's fine if you question these type of things, because Israel has lied a lot. They lied about the beheaded babies, which I think was pretty wrong. But when it comes to this topic, right, they use this source. Her name is Pramila Patton, and she says that there was actually sexual violence. This lady says that she spoke to some of the people, and the thing is you got to keep in mind that she didn't actually talk to any of the witnesses, so keep that in mind. But yeah, she discussed that while discussing sexual violence against women, she said that she has credible sources. She never actually said who, just because confidentiality, but she claims that her sources said that there was, and that there was gang R-word and just regular R-word in 3 different locations, and there was necrophilia to one of the women who was tied up. These are some of the allegations happening right now, though I do want to say that she does bring up how forensic, it's not really trusted, just because some of the bodies have been burned, which is why some of the forensics has been questionable. But keep in mind that I don't want you guys to attack this reporter, because she even said herself that what Israel is doing is terrible, because they claim that just because she reported this, right, Israel's trying to use it as a reason to not use a ceasefire. And even she said it herself, that's absolutely a terrible reason to use that. Even though this was a pretty terrible thing that happened, even she says that no, there's no reason why you should keep going on the war. This was pretty terrible, but no, you're still killing a bunch of innocent people. But keep in mind though that she did say that she never interviewed the people. She watched other people's interviews, and she watched a ton of photos, 5,000 photos to be exact. And this is how she came up with her conclusion. Though keep in mind that okay, I don't actually know this much about this reporter, but she did say at the very end that there were also Palestinian detainees who were violated too. They were raped, and I think that is something important. Listen, me personally, I don't find it hard to believe that something like this could happen. What Hamas did was pretty terrible, and I'm not here to justify, don't take my word to justify what's happening in Palestine right now, because even if this did happen or didn't, it's still the same outcome. They're still killing people that literally didn't do anything about it, they literally have no guns, they have no involvement with Hamas, and they still killed them anyway. I'm just talking about what actually happened here, because I'm here to tell you what happened, and I don't find it hard to believe, in my opinion, just because of just the way military people are, and they have guns, and usually when it comes to war in a lot of history, you do usually see violence against women like that. It sucks, but it's kind of told by witnesses. If this were told by like Israeli like soldiers or something, okay, yeah, maybe I'd be pretty suspicious. If it's told by the government and the government says something, I'm pretty suspicious. But if it's just like, you know, regular Israeli citizens, then I do have a slightly less suspicion. I feel more confident in the source. But when it comes to this, since it came from like, you know, regular citizens, I do feel a little bit more confident that they may be telling the truth, even though they may be a little racist, I guess. Then I still feel pretty confident that they may be telling the truth. Though an article on the New York Times did question one of them. His name was Raz Cohen. Raz Cohen claimed to have witnessed these events, and he was questioned due to his story changing each time he told it because he claimed to be in different locations each time. This is what made people skeptical about his reliability. So keep in mind that this stuff did happen. Personally, I think it happened, though some people are questioning it. Yeah, just I figured it may be good to tell both perspectives anyway, even though I don't agree with it. But this is something that I watched a video with Mehdi and Basim, and one thing they did bring up, which I do think is pretty good, is that the United Nations, the UN, they made a report and they said that like the commission like identifies like sexual violence in several locations, but the thing was is there was no like concrete evidence that the military told them to do it. Like the Hamas told them to, oh yo, go like do these type of things to these women. And also there was also like this question because like the journalists and like the victims, there weren't really too many people like talking to them, which kind of made it like hard to know if they were, you know, how verifiable this is, because like the quote is, the commission has have reviewed testimonies obtained by journalists and Israeli police concerning rape, but has not been able to independently verify such allegations due to a lack of access to victims, witness, and crime sites, and of the obstruction of its investigation by the Israeli authorities. What this means is basically Israel has these interviews, but they don't actually have like the full interview. We haven't seen like the full interview, unedited and uncut, so it's hard to tell what actually happened just because it's so edited. And you know, I guess people just are questioning the reliability about it. I'm trying to be cautious with what I say because there's speculation that Israel is doing this to carry out the war. Because in International Women's Day, they launched an ad where they specifically say, "United in solidarity with Israeli sisters who were kidnapped, raped, and brutally murdered on October 7th. No women should endure such horrors at the hands of terrorists." And the key word they use here is terrorists. What they say is true. No one should have to go through that. But, you know, it definitely does feel weird with the terminology they use here. But one thing I do gotta say is I do agree with Mehdi here.
The Israeli government and some of its defenders abroad, people like Sheryl Sandberg and others, have been stressing that the world has ignored the voices of Israeli Jewish women who were attacked, assaulted, taken hostage, and allegedly raped en masse, they say, on October the 7th. And some people, and I would include myself in this bucket, I mean, I would say there's three types of groups. There's one group of people who say, you must accept that there was mass rape on October 7th and that Hamas used it as a weapon of war. It was all part of the plan. There's another group of people who say, nobody was raped on October 7th. It's all Israeli propaganda. And there's me, and I put myself in this bucket that says, maybe there was. But where is the investigation? Where is the independent investigation? Why are the Israelis blocking independent investigators? If you want me to accept the Israeli government's word for it, I will not. They say believe women. And we do believe women. But the problem is a lot of the reporting and a lot of the discourse has not involved women. It's involved Israeli spokespersons and evidence-free claims and UN investigators being blocked access.
And I also feel that like we may be better to listen to a female journalist talking about this issue, just because, you know, us and Mehdi, we're both guys. We are not going to know as much as like a woman going through these issues, just because, you know, it, as much as us guys hate to say it, it doesn't happen to us as much as women. It happens way more to women than guys. It still happens to guys, but significantly way more to women. There is a lot of misinformation about the sexual violence. While I do think it is likely to have happened, it definitely feels restricted on the information because they don't talk about the witnesses. Going based off information is not enough. We need evidence. I always give misinformation because it's such a rabbit hole, because there's so much misinformation, especially by the New York Times. Journalist Anna Schwartz, who was caught liking a tweet supporting violence against Palestinian women, she's also not a real journalist, by the way. She's a filmmaker, which is important to know. And there's also other people that worked on the article, like Adam Sella and Jeffrey Gentleman, who won a New York Times award. And keep that in mind. Now, 60 journalists called them out because they made an article called Screams Without Words. She claimed that Hamas weaponized sexual violence on October 7th, but didn't provide any sources. This is some Hasan Piker type of stuff. Remember, Deepa Kuma, the lady who debunks the Screams Without Words article, has also said there probably was sexual violence, but it was not systematic to do it. They never got orders to do it. So it was just people going off on their own doing it, because there's no evidence of them doing it. And it definitely does also feel like propaganda that Israel is doing, with the narrative of white women getting sexually assaulted by a group of people, like, you know, with Arab people to be specific. And this is not the only time like someone has used this narrative. Like with America, they've used it with black people, indigenous people, and Mexican people. It's something that like has been used in the past to dehumanize them, and they use it to like justify brutality against them. Also, I think it's important to mention, but sexual assault is a terrible experience. We all know someone that's been affected by it, whether they tell us or not. WillyMacShow made a really good article discussing the topic, saying that October 7th was bad, while also saying that Israel killing a bunch of Palestinians is also terrible too. And she discusses like criticisms made to her, like Hamas wouldn't do it for religious reasons, and how that is untrue. And she does it in a way that's not Islamophobic, because she discusses how every religion is equally violent. Like every religion has had its racist past, and even though it's wrong to rape in basically every single religion, a lot of people do it anyway. It's just like circumstances, so like a lot of people might have more opportunity, or we just don't hear about the religious extremism like that. Like there's definitely more of a narrative. Like with Christianity, I'd say there's definitely less reporting on the extremism there, even though there's quite a lot in America that has affected the government. There's a documentary on it called Praying for Armageddon that discusses it. And it's not just like Islamic people. There's a lot of people in the West that paint Islam as, you know, the only person that has extremism, which there is. But there's also a lot of American ones, but a lot of people don't really talk about it. It's something, extremism in religion is something that happens everywhere. Point is, you just gotta not fall for it, and you also gotta not generalize. But in the article, she discusses propaganda, how the UN has made complaints that they are not doing enough to help Israeli women. But she also is knowledgeable about sexual violence in war in general. She discusses how women have a hard time coming out of their experiences, because it's something that like may take up to years for them to even discuss. There's a lot of misinformation going to come out because of Israel, but there's also going to be a lot of information that doesn't come out just due to psychological trauma from both actions to Israeli women and also Palestinian women, because they were both victims of this. But keep in mind that women who face violence, like sexual violence, don't typically receive justice, which is why some women don't speak up. And also they get hate doing so, since this is political now. It shouldn't be, but it is. And she also discusses how political violence against women happen in so many different places, but it's never talked about or investigated beyond just Israel and Ukraine. Like it happened to a Nigerian woman, and you know, like the Rwanda genocide, it had like a bunch of like people that were violated, but a lot of people don't talk about that. It seems that it is definitely used as a narrative, which I'm glad she talks about, how it's definitely used as propaganda. Like it's terrible, but it doesn't justify killing innocent people that didn't even do it. It's, you know, it's not fair. So in conclusion, for October 7th, there is questions of violence against women, as there is suspicion of them editing the witnesses' Zoom calls, and also things like beheaded babies being completely untrue and debunked. So October 7th has been used for propaganda. Even if the sexual violence is true, it doesn't mean that Israel has the right to kill a bunch of innocent people. Now, what happened on October 7th, even if all this is completely untrue, like the sexual violence is untrue, it's still a bad thing that happened. Because, you know, 1,200 people dying, that's absolutely horrible. And there is no justification for that. So I just gotta say what happened, because there is misinformation here, and it is used for propaganda. But like, even though I think it's a likely possibility that it happened, I definitely do feel that I need to talk about it, because it definitely is used to build a narrative. Remember, a lot of the people involved in this event aren't the ones who actually die. A lot of people that died are completely like random people, kids.
Bad news for Israel as they ended up making their biggest enemy, Sinwar, into an international icon that's now admired by billions. They're so obsessed with killing where they thought that releasing this video where Yahya Sinwar literally looked like a Hollywood star, keffiyeh around his neck, one arm amputated, and with the other arm still holding a stake, throwing a stake at a drone that's about to kill him, and he looked unbelievably relaxed. Yahya Sinwar stared down death like he was at a restaurant waiting for his order. And it also completely burst all of the myth that Israel created around Yahya Sinwar, portraying him as a coward who hid behind human shields. And if Hamas really was using human shields, then you best believe when the occupation finally found Yahya Sinwar, he would have been surrounded by hundreds of hostages deep underground. Yahya Sinwar did not choose death. He actually chose life. He chose a life with dignity. We are the ones who choose death every day, living under the boot of Westernism and Zionism. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is a real leader of the Arab world, not people like MBS or MBZ.
I want to say one thing. When I was explaining the history, there's a difference in asking why a group like Hamas exists and then also justifying a group like Hamas. And there's a really big issue I saw on TikTok that tries to portray the Palestinians as Hamas. Not by Zionists or news media or anything, but just like people that support Palestine. And I want to let everybody know that you can dislike both like groups. You can dislike Hamas and you can also dislike Israel. And here's the thing. Hamas caused October 7th, which has no justification. Obviously, there were some things that were like exaggerated, but still, killing 1,200 people is terrible. Absolutely horrible. There's no justification for that. And the only reason I said to look at the history was to understand why they're in that position. Because I think Israel has a lot to like be blamed for. Like, I'm not blaming Hamas for the position that Palestinian people are in, which is why I talked about the history. But I need you guys to understand, and I want you guys to pay a lot of attention to what I'm going to say right now. I am glad that Hamas is fighting back against the occupation. But I think Hamas is fighting back immorally, and I think it's wrong a lot of what they do. Hamas built tunnels, and they knew it was going to kill Palestinian people.
The fact that you're down here in tunnels that have been built under civilian areas, you're launching rockets from civilian areas as well, doesn't that mean that you're endangering Palestinians that you claim to be fighting for?
We are sacrificing ourselves and our times and everything we do in order to ensure a better future for our children.
But are you also not sacrificing the civilians that are directly above you?
Of course, we don't want them to get killed or to get targeted, but this is the only choice we have. This is what we can do, and they are supporting us. You can go to the sea, you can go to the air, you can go to anywhere. So that's why we are building tunnels. This is the only mean which is possible for Al-Qassam brigades.
But keep in mind that Israel said that the tunnels were as big as New York. Like, this is basically what they said. But here's the thing. Unless if Hamas had some telekinesis or like they had teamed up with Magneto or something, that would basically be impossible to make in 10 months. Like, that's literally not possible. Like, physically impossible. Like, that doesn't make any sense. And even if they did, that's still no excuse for Israel bombing a bunch of... Like, no matter what they did, no matter what Hamas did, that doesn't justify what they did to the Palestinian people. Because it's not about Hamas. It's not about Hamas. It's about just why are they even bombing them? Obviously, this is why I dislike both. That's why my stance is I don't like both sides. Like, I want what's best for the people of Palestine. But the way Hamas fights back is terrible. Because they know Israel is a bunch of homicidal maniacs. And they know they were going to bomb them anyway. Just like they said in the interview. I do understand why some Palestinians would join Hamas. Just based off all the horrible things Israel did. You know, they bombed their homes. They killed their family members. And they have like no way to fight back. Like, they're defenseless, you know. Like, I understand why they want to like join a group like Hamas. But I'm not gonna sit here, cause dude, we're not living in Gaza right now. We're living outside of it, you know. I'm not going to sit here and justify what Hamas did, and I think a lot of people shouldn't either. We can understand why they're doing it. We can understand why they're in a position that they are, but it doesn't mean that we should justify it. You know, we can understand why they're in that position, but there's a complete, like I said, there's a complete difference between justifying and understanding. Now, I want to say that what Israel did is horrible. Like, I want you guys to know that per one Israeli citizen is 30 Palestinian deaths. One Israeli life is basically with 30 Palestinian people. That is a genocide. There's no arguing against that. I dislike Hamas, but I think the government is also a bunch of homicidal maniacs, like I mentioned. The only reason I'm here is to humanize the Palestinian people. And I want you guys to look at the sources so you can fact check this. Because I have criticisms about the Israeli government. And I just wanted to leave a small section here because I want you guys to make sure you guys differentiate Hamas from Palestinian people. What is happening in Gaza? Now, this is the part you've all been waiting for. I wanted to do more than just show statistics because even though bombings killing families is very upsetting, it's become so normalized that Palestinians die every single day. That's why I had the idea to animate it, because I want you guys to feel something. I want you guys to have a reaction because what's happening is upsetting. And I'm beyond tired of seeing people on TikTok or YouTube referencing other genocides to downplay this one. Because I've seen so many comments saying, oh, the Holocaust happened and 6 million people died, so 40,000 isn't really that much. I've seen this so many times. And I think most of the people that keep up to date with the news have seen these comments too. And that's such a horrible statement to make. 40,000 people is an insane amount. Because, listen, I've been looking at this story for hours and hours, and I wasn't even able to find everything. I kept seeing more different ways that Palestinians have died, and it's so sad to watch. But the thing is even if it was a lot less, even if 200 people died, that's still horrible. That's the amount of a small school. So that's still an insane amount of people that died. It shouldn't have happened because there's so many families and people that get affected by this, and they all have their own story. And here's the thing too, a lot of the people that died, you will never know, because a lot of this stuff gets unreported. A lot of deaths that happened even during World War II, nobody knows if those are the exact numbers, because they might actually be higher. Nobody knows, because when it comes to genocides, they are so incredibly hard to figure out because it's just such a big number to work with. There's so many stories that are never going to come out. Like, And even then, people that's got their limbs torn off because of the bombs, they also have a story to tell. And we might not be able to know because there's so much to get through. 40,000 people. And then all the people that got their limbs torn off. That's even more. That's almost double. I will never understand why people don't want to use the term genocide here, because it so obviously is. Houses were blown up and people had nowhere else to go. So they went to a church. They made a settlement there, and then Israel blew it up. People lost their homes and they decided to make a settlement here, and it's completely gone. Mosques, schools, universities, even hospitals. So this wasn't just like people in a hospital getting blown up, or like a hospital getting attacked, or like a hospital getting set on fire. It's not just that. It's also people that need medical supplies, they can't find it no more because the only thing that had the supplies is completely gone. A lot of people need medical help, like injuries. Like a lot of people don't have the proper materials because, like I said, when it comes to injuries, it's not just scratches. It's also like people's limbs completely gone off. And how are they supposed to survive without a hospital? Refugee camps and even safe zones. Think about it. A safe zone got bombed. The place where Israel told them that it was going to be completely safe. They claimed that there were Hamas people there. But how many times does this actually happen? How many times can they use the excuse that there were people there? Because the thing is they knew that the Palestinian people didn't have the technology to get the message that they need to leave. They don't have the technology to know. A lot of people, they didn't know until it was too late. So a lot of people ended up dying. And those that say that Israel is just defending itself, what justification do they have for killing toddlers? Found by American doctors with bullet holes in their head. Were they Hamas? Toddlers who could barely push a shopping cart. We've all seen toddlers. They're like the size of your knee. So, like, it's impossible to say that they were child soldiers because, like, it's impossible. Like, I know some people are child soldiers when they're teens, but this is impossible. It's not a possibility. Because the thing is it's not just toddlers. These were some people younger than toddlers. So you can't make the argument that they were like snipers. They had a misfire or something, like where snipers, they're shooting and then they try to hit the target, but the target moves. Like, you can't make the argument, because the thing is even if that were the case, why exactly would a child be shot in the head twice? How does that happen? Specifically in the head. How does that happen? How does that happen with multiple children? How does it happen that multiple children younger than toddlers have bullet holes in their chest, their head? How does that happen with multiple children? Like, this is a military funded by the United States. The United States keeps praising itself for being such a good military, and yet they still kill so many children. How is this defending itself? How? It's not possible to say that. Is it justified to bomb Gaza with 6,000 bombs, which is more bombs that they sent to Afghanistan? People without homes, the worldwide famine. Things are bad with not allowing in good hygiene, since a lot of people don't really have the aid for that, right? But there's one thing that Israel does that it's a lot worse than what people say. The World Food Programme Executive Director, Cindy McCain, who saw what was happening there, she said that there was full-blown famine. There's so little food that Israel is allowing to enter into Gaza, because it's gotten to the point where it's only children having 1 meal a day. And this does not seem like a justification for allowing children to have 1 meal a day, and now children are now having nutrition deficiency, which just feels like an unjustification, because this isn't affecting Hamas at all. This is a really big deal, because you got to think about it. These children are like nutrition deficiency. This is something permanent. This doesn't just affect, like, not just with babies, even with young toddlers too. This affects them too. And the thing that's even crazier about that is 300 aid workers died. And even Justin Trudeau, while supporting Israel, he even said that that's unacceptable to kill those workers. And Israel during 2024 September, they blocked 84% of human aid coming in. And of course Hamas is affected, but this is inhuman. A lot of human rights organizations say how wrong it is, and Israel is occupying Gaza and they're abusing their power. The blockage also includes tents, so a lot of people are homeless right now, and 60% of homes are destroyed, and I'm pretty sure it's up to like 80%. I have to double check. But the thing is a lot of people are homeless right now and they need beds. And this blockage also includes things like blood supply, which there's a big issue on this because, like I mentioned earlier, the hospitals are destroyed. So there's a lot less, and people need these things. People need these medical supplies. And with the destroyed hospitals and the blockage, it makes it almost impossible to survive in Gaza. And this is just human aid. And there is a lot of reasons why a lot of people need human aid, because it's not just Hamas people. This is normal people. I'll give an example. One boy who got bombed, and there were people trying to help him. The people that tried to help him, they got bombed too. I don't think I've ever seen anything this cold-blooded. I don't think I'm allowed to show this, but it's one of the hardest things I've ever seen, dude. Like, dude, I'm telling you guys that you guys need to see it to believe it. Like, I don't know if I'm allowed to link this. I might not, but if I do, just know that this is horrible. Like, there is no justification for this. I know they made the documentary where they talk about like AI being used, but dude, it's not just artificial intelligence, even if it is in this case. What about the cases of like bullet holes? Like, how or why would a soldier do that? Like with guns, that means they would have had to have used it. Israel just doesn't even respond to that. And then there's also other cases like Palestinians being mistreated in prisons. Sadly, there was a confirmed case of rape in one of the prisons. There was a video showing a gang rape on a Palestinian. And this was 100% concrete proof because there was a video literally showing exactly what happened. Now, this isn't just the worst part, because Ben-Gvir, an Israeli official, told the media that they shouldn't arrest their heroes. There was a lot of backlash by the right-wing Israelis saying that they shouldn't have arrested the Israeli officers, which was really terrible of them. But the thing was, this was not the only instance of sexual violence against Palestinian women. The United Nations published a report stating that we're particularly distressed by reports that Palestinian women and girls in detentions have been subjected to multiple forms of sexual assault, such as being stripped naked and being searched by male Israeli army officers. At least 2 female Palestinian detainees were reportedly raped, while others were reportedly threatened with rape and sexual violence, the expert said. They also noted that photos of female detainees in degrading circumstances were also reportedly taken by Israeli army and uploaded online. I wish it didn't, but when a group is so dehumanized by a government, this is why I think it's important to have these discussions. And there's so much more to this. There is journalists being killed, people with white flags, blue helmets, and I wish that was it. But there's so much more, like I mentioned earlier. And 42,000 people, there's probably even more that's unreported. 16,000 children. According to Save the Children, it was apparently up to 20,000 under rubble. 1,200 Israelis are dead. That's a sad number. More Palestinians have died, which is obvious. It's like a 30-to-1 ratio. Like, dude, it shouldn't happen. How is this defending yourself? You're not defending yourself. Those Israelis should have never died. I really think you guys need to look this up, man, because these videos are very hard to watch. Save the Children also has a donation box if you guys want to donate to them, because trust me, they do. I will discuss this more at the end. Benjamin Netanyahu has been arrested, but I really do hope he stays in prison. He's one of the big bads of Israel, but it wouldn't be the first time a president goes to jail and then they let him out after like a few weeks because they claim that, oh, he's too old, so he's gonna die anyway, and they just never have the power. I just hope that doesn't happen. I really do hope he stays in jail. I have hope that things will turn out good at the end, but there's a lot to do. I will give you guys 5 ways to help. I want to end this presentation with this. Those who are high school students, workers, temporary workers, college or university students, and anyone with a voice who could help the Palestinians, I have a list of things you could do. Because unfortunately, a lot of the North American governments, they support Israel because of AIPAC and NATO and all those type of things. But this also works for people outside the countries. But the things you should be able to do is, number 1, donate to the Palestinian people, because the war has been happening for over a year. So a lot of them already lost all their money, And they will need support now and after the war ends because they just needed to survive. So even a small donation could help a lot. 2. Tell your family and friends about the information. Trust me, a lot of these narratives try to paint Israel as the victim, but they killed so many innocent families. When you tell them what's happening and how the media like lies and or downplays what's happening, like calling the deaths terrorist, then they'll get to understand like the bigger picture of what's happening. Like, because a lot of people don't even know what happened previously before October 7th. Like the whole thing about how Palestine were living in really terrible conditions, a lot of people don't even know about that. So I think it would just help like the family and friends to understand what's happening. Number 3, boycott these brands listed here. Believe me when I say that those McDonald's meals are not Happy Meals because the children are dead. I wish this were a dark humor joke, but sadly it's the reality of how things are over there. They're funding a genocide. The list is a lot bigger because it includes things like Tim Hortons, but keep this in mind. And this is why a lot of people, are very harsh when it comes to like boycotting, because they literally are giving the meals to soldiers that are killing a lot of Palestinian people. Those meals go to the Israeli people that killed those toddlers that I mentioned. Protests. Like I showed earlier, protests in Spain worked out, so if there's a general strike or a normal protest, please join it. Because trillions of dollars are going to Israel. Even if you don't have the empathy or care about what the government is doing, at least know that the government is forcing you to fund the genocide. Number 5. Educate yourself as much as you can. No, there's much more to this I didn't talk about, like what happened before World War I and thousands of years ago, which is stupid to bring up because the whole idea of them taking their land back is kind of stupid because like some of the Palestinians were living there at the same time as them. Like some people consider Palestinians as Semites, and there's also a lot of like fake news that I didn't bring up, like how Israel doesn't have an apartheid or they aren't occupying Palestine, or that there isn't a genocide, which I disproved in this video. Like these are things that are happening. Like Israel is occupying Palestine and there is a genocide and there is an apartheid. And I recommend sources that I link in the video. Though it is good to keep in mind that the sources that say Hamas or Israel said something, like anytime they quote Israel or Hamas, just keep in mind that they may be a biased perspective. If it is someone that probably has a political agenda, just keep that in mind, because you guys are journalists, you guys are normal people, so I'll remember to tell you guys. Now, if you guys want someone more specific that I trust to look at videos like this, it would be Mehdi Hasan. I think he's a really good journalist that talks about human rights violations that Israel did. And I think that's a very good source to look at because he makes debates, and I think he did a really good job in this one debate, especially the one where he talks about the children that were shot with snipers. And that's the one that inspired the video here. Like, when I looked into it, it was worse than what he said. It was way worse. I didn't expect it anything like this because I gave it the benefit of the doubt that maybe the AI was programmed really horribly. Like, there were suggestions that AI may have done this, and I thought maybe there's no way a human would be this, like, this immoral and maybe be this terrible, because this is something that I've seen, like, criminals in, like, South America. Like, that's how bad they are. Like the criminal organizations of South America, like it got to that point where like they're almost indistinguishable from them. How do you accidentally shoot a child in the face twice? It's so sad and horrible to hear. Now, another good source you could look at is a documentary in Al Jazeera, and here's the source, like the link for you guys to look at. And I also want to say, but like people who you shouldn't listen to, but under no circumstance should you look at so-called journalist streamers, because like in general it's really unprofessional how they do things. Okay, think about it like this. Would you rather walk into a room where 100 people read an article discussing the topic, or would you rather walk into a room where one person explains to the 100 people about the article and you all listen to what he says? What is better? Because here's the thing, even if that one person tells you what happens in the article, you don't know what he's leaving out, you don't know if he remembers it properly, and you don't know if he misinterpreted something, because that happens a lot and it's normal. It's 100% fine if you do. everybody would have a really good discussion if 100 people read the same article, though I don't know why they don't. Also, I want you guys to take someone like the New York Times with a grain of salt, because there are accusations of them telling journalists not to use words like occupation or genocide when discussing Palestine. And there's also like really common people you shouldn't listen to, like Sneeko or Daniel Bozarian, who is just stupid. If you listen to those people, you will lose the argument. And I will explain it in another video, but just know that these people do not do their homework. And there's a method I like to call little truth here, little truth there. And like, he says some things that are true, but he completely falls flat with the racist BS that he uses in his argument, which is just completely untrue. I will discuss this in my social video, but make sure you guys check all the sources I linked. I recommend you guys look at WillyMacShow's article, because I think she did a really good job, especially since, you know, she's talking about sexual violence, and I'm a guy and she's a woman, so I don't know. I like, a lot of men will hate me for saying this, but I think that's a very important thing, like, you know, because I think they would probably understand these type of situations a lot better than me. Trust me, it's a lot better to listen than to speak. And there's a proper way of listening that involves not interrupting the other person, even if you disagree with them. Now, I bring this up because there are people in the political commentary that I really don't like. Like I mentioned, like Sneeko, I think he's probably the last person no one to listen to. But there's some people out here that actually do their homework. And I want to tell you guys that you should be careful with that. Because there are people that do their homework, but that doesn't mean that they bring a good argument. Because here's the thing. I saw this YouTuber, and I could tell he's a historian. He definitely tells, like, he's definitely a history major because of how he talks about things, and he's pretty knowledgeable about things. But the thing is like, it doesn't necessarily mean he's right, because here's the thing. He brings up the argument that people that join the IDF are bad people. That, like, he talks about this woman that joined the IDF, and the thing is like, I think it's fine if you talk about her being in the IDF when she's like 30 or something, like, you know, she's like she's choosing to be there. But then he brings the argument that if you're 18 years old and you go to the IDF, then it's your own fault and you're a bad person. And I think that's a very bad argument, because here's the thing. The IDF, if you don't know, is the group that's like involved in Gaza. The people I talk about, like the war crimes, that's mostly done by the IDF. Like, the IDF is not a good organization at all. They're the ones killing a lot of these innocent people. And the thing is like, yeah, they do 100% of my mind, they deserve to be criticized for what they've done. And the thing is like, I have another criticism about them, but the way the other YouTuber talks about it is not necessarily the best, because my criticism would be, you shouldn't force 18-year-olds to join your military if they don't want to. I think that's immoral and that's wrong. And his excuse was that the reason why you should blame the children and not the IDF for forcing them is because they have 3 ways to get out. They could just say you can not go for religious reasons, medical reasons, or you could just say you don't want to. But if you say you don't want to, you get put in jail for a few months. The thing is he plays it off as it's something easy to do, like going to jail for a few months. You guys don't understand that going to jail, you're not going to juvie no more. You're 18 years old. You're going to actual prison. Actual prison, you're gonna, listen, I'm not trying to scare you guys, but the sad truth is you're gonna be passed around. You're 18 years old. You're the weakest one there, and like, you're probably the most young looking one, so a lot of prisoners will probably like that type of thing. You're gonna be put with a lot of bad people that do deserve to be there. But the thing is like, that's why I think it's very immoral to make an 18-year-old go to prison for not wanting to join the military. It's wrong. And the thing is this has long-term effects too. Like, you're not going to be able to leave the country to like America or like certain places that don't accept you if you have a criminal record. Nor are you going to be able to get a college degree, because a lot of places, they don't accept people with criminal records. And you're not going to be able to find a lot of jobs, because a lot of jobs, they don't accept people with criminal records. This is a permanent effect on you from 18 years old. This isn't just like an old man that's about to die. This is someone that has their whole lives ahead of them, and they have no choice but to continue on like this and continue on being mistreated by society just because he didn't want to join the military. It's a very bad thing. And the thing is this is not something you should blame an 18-year-old for. You should blame the government for making them go to these places and killing the people, because the government is like the one putting you in the jail cell for not doing what they say. It's horrible. Don't get me wrong. Participating in a group like the IDF is absolutely horrible. But at the same time, it's also the fault of the government. They're the ones with like a knife to their neck going like, oh, if you don't go, then you're going to get beat up in prison. It's the IDF's fault for putting you in that position. The reason why I bring this up is because I think there is a lot of good arguments of why the IDF is a bad organization. And I think this is one of them. That the IDF forces 18-year-olds to go to these places because it's a manipulative. This is something that organizations and even like cult leaders do. Like Joseph Kony, for example. He's a very bad guy. If you guys know who he is, he's a very bad guy. But they did an interview with one of his members, and he said that reason why he doesn't leave is because anytime he tries to, because he was kidnapped and then forced to work with them, and he said that when he tries to leave, they beat him, and he's like almost dead, and that's why he doesn't want to leave, because when someone tries to leave, they make other people watch, and it just puts this fear in them that there's consequences to leaving. And that's why a lot of people don't leave these organizations. Same thing with someone like Jim Jones, for example. They have guns and they're afraid that they're going to leave. Imagine that, but with a country. They may not put you in a position where you see the people getting tortured, but you know for a fact that people in prison get beat up for that type of thing. And they get like violated too. It sucks, but it's a sad truth about these type of things. It's not black and white. It's a very gray thing about how governments treat these people. The thing is people control the entire country. It's like a lot of people don't even have family members where they could go to because they probably agree with the IDF, and they may not even be able to leave as a refugee because they may not have like the luxury to do it. So that's why I have to defend these people. Even though I dislike the IDF, I do think that making 18-year-olds go to war is terrible. It's easy for an Australian man to say these type of things, and that's why I don't necessarily think he's in a position to say these type of things, where you're never going to have these choice to like say no. Like you can, like, as much as we as people say, if I were in that position I would say no, we will never be in that position. It's easy for us to say it. It's easy for the Canadian man, the Australian man, like all these American people to say, yeah, I wouldn't do it. But the truth is we don't know, and it's fine to say we don't know. Now listen, I do have advice for people that are going to the IDF, the people that don't want to work there. And my advice would be just do 3 things. First of all, you can use one of the excuses I mentioned earlier, like religious reasons or medical reasons. Just try to use that. Number 2, what I would recommend is you leave the country as a refugee literally anywhere else. Literally, these people are terrible, dude. Trust me, if you can. I know, like, it's hard. I know it's easy for me to say, like, you should leave a country because, 18 years old, that's your friends and family. You grew up there, and that's the people you live with. But at the same time, you know these type of people. I don't know if you have to do it again if you come back, but if you have no choice, then that's what I would recommend. And if you're a parent, I do recommend you don't send your kids here because that's wrong. And the last thing I would say is if you have absolutely no choice, you don't have the luxuries to do any of these things, like leave the country, or you just don't have the medical reasons or religious reasons, then my advice would be just do quiet quitting and do it in a place that doesn't really help them that much. Like, as long as you're not helping them that much and you're doing the bare minimum. Every job thinks you need to do more than what they say. Like, there's obviously a bare minimum, and usually jobs want you to do way more than the bare minimum. But this one, you need to do the bare minimum. That's my advice. Just do quiet quitting, where you're not really trying that hard. I know it's very mediocre advice, or I'd honestly say it's less than mediocre, but when it comes to this type of people, like really big groups, then I'm afraid that maybe less than mediocre advice would be all I can give. If you have more, yeah, 100% I recommend you guys give it, but that would be my advice. Because I don't think it's fair to tell an 18-year-old to go to jail. But I'm also willing to say that killing innocent people in Palestine is also wrong. But it's not as simple as the solution that the YouTuber gives. No, I bring this up because this is a pro-Palestinian creator talking about this. And the thing is like, keep in mind that like pro-Palestinian creators, they're not necessarily the best at arguing things. Like, I've seen them before, but like, even though I agree with some of the things they say, I do think they could have maybe put a better argument in. Because the thing is, it's like I said, streaming is way too, like, it's way too sloppy in my opinion. Making an 8-hour stream just makes you not have enough time to prepare and have a proper argument. For example, some people say that hating Zionists is being anti-Semitic because like 90% of Israeli Jews are Jewish. And the thing is like, I have a really good response to that. But the thing is like, a lot of people, they don't really respond to that very well at all. And the thing is I have a really good response to that because I think that is a fair question. And it's not something we should be angry about because it's a very easy misunderstanding. And I do have a really good response to that. I'll explain it in my next video. But I had to have time to prepare for it because I wanted to show examples and give a proper response. But the thing is, it's like a lot of these YouTubers, they don't respond that well because you can either do one of two things. You can say that they're racist, Zionist, Nazi or whatever, or you can actually give a proper response and perhaps even change their mind. And if you don't change their mind, then maybe you can change the mind of the audience, which I think could help a lot. And that's the thing. It's better to prepare yourself than not to prepare yourself. Otherwise, you just look really bad. Even if you're a Palestinian streamer, the word streamer is the part you should ignore. Just don't look at streamers. Trust me, they might do their homework, but they just don't have the time to prepare for an argument. Which, who could blame them? Making an argument is pretty hard. But I guess they just downplay how big of an impact it could have. Especially since, like, you know, sometimes their comment section is filled with a bunch of crazy people too. This is, by the way, this is for everybody. Dude, Destiny and all that, yeah, those guys are so weird. But yeah, don't listen to any of these people. Because like I said, it's not just about having the right argument. It's also about doing your homework. And it's not just about doing your homework, it's also about understanding the homework and making sure you know what it is that matters about it. So you guys made it to the end of the video. I'm glad you guys decided to listen to this very controversial topic, which it shouldn't be, but it is. It is a very difficult topic to talk about because I wanted to provide my perspective on this. I wanted to say I'm pro-Palestinian, but the truth is it shouldn't matter. What happened. What there is truth of, there is truth of. These people, all these people, including those Israelis in October 7th, and including all the 40,000 Palestinians, they've all been affected by violence. Violence is what causes. Violence is horrifying, and violence is what these Palestinians are trying to run away from, and what they're trying to stop. And everybody dislikes this violence. When I discuss this violence, there's violence caused for no reason. There are times where violence is caused for solutions. And the solution here, it makes no sense because, like I mentioned, those war crimes, a lot of those people are not Hamas. They're just regular people. People that have kids with them. People that are mothers, parents, and they have no guns on them. They have white flags, completely turned red because Israel decided to shoot them. I don't know why they decided to shoot them. And I just wanted to provide my perspective because I think you guys need to take the time to do those 5 steps that I mentioned. I do think that what Israel is doing is absolutely wrong, and I do think that boycotting could help with their funding. They have a lot of bombs that are funded by us, all of us, and we all have to be responsible. That's why I'm very harsh. That's why I said a very harsh statement about the boycott, because I'm trying to be edgy or whatever. I said it because I want you to get the point across that, hey, this meal is literally going to someone doing these horrible things. If you could not fund them, then they're gonna have less power over people. They're gonna have less power over an occupation. They're gonna have less power for bombs. And the point is, they're gonna have less power for violence. And that's why I think boycotting is important. And it's not just about stopping an entire group, because the truth is stopping an entire country, yeah, of course, these protests, these boycotts, they're very important. It's way more important if it happens in Israel, but you know, since our countries are kind of supporting them, this is maybe the most we can do, which won't necessarily be a lot, but it is very significant and it does make a difference. Despite what anyone else says, they do make a difference. But most importantly, out of anything you could do, I do think that a donation is the most important, because one thing I didn't mention at the time was that winter is coming. Right now, it's very cold and things are going to get much colder. These people, they don't have homes. Israel completely bombed them all. So the best thing to do is give these people a chance. Give these people shelter. Give these people money and food and water, because they're going to need it so much right now. They're going to need it far more than anybody else. I know a lot of you guys don't necessarily have the funds, or maybe you guys don't even have a job. But maybe if you can, if you ever get the chance, do what you can. Even just $2 in their economy, it's probably quite a lot. It could probably save them at least one day worth of meal for a small amount of money. And I'm not here to, beg, but unfortunately, it's what I have to do. I would much rather beg than, steal. But I just feel this is something important I had to talk about. I had to do this without a script, just because I wanted to speak to you guys from my personal perspective. I know I blabber on a lot, but I do think this is something very important. Despite your political perspective, you gotta admit, these Palestinians have suffered because of violence. No matter who you think caused it, they suffered violence and they need help.